So the world is anticipating April 2nd, 2025, and the full-on reveal of the Nintendo Switch 2. I think even if you're not a Nintendo fan, it is going to be exciting to see what this system brings to the table. What's different about it versus the standard Nintendo Switch? How are the Joy-Cons going to be? Will it have the mouse functionality that so many of us are anticipating it having? And of course, the most important thing, what are the games? What are we going to be playing on the new hardware from Nintendo? And how different is it going to be from the original Nintendo Switch? I know many of us are looking forward to it, and I especially am, because it's fun to talk about new hardware, especially when it comes to us from Nintendo. But with the Switch 2 and kind of the lead up to it thus far, there's been some patents that we've been talking about for several months on this channel that kind of coincide with what to expect from the hardware potentially. I'm not saying it's a foregone conclusion. I'm not saying it's definitely going to happen. We recently talked about the whole GameCube situation potentially coming to Nintendo Switch 2 online and things like that. But I do feel like these patents do give us a little bit of a glimpse as to what the system is going to be doing. And one of the patents that we've been talking about for a while on the channel is, of course, upscaling, artificial intelligence upscaling, types of DLSS, which is obviously the future of video games and video game graphics and development, in my opinion. You know, you're at the point of diminishing returns with hardware and what you can actually really do with it to sort of push it into another realm. So I feel like this sort of stuff is going to circumvent issues that are created when it comes to weaker hardware, but trying to hit a certain level of graphical fidelity. I mean, we've already seen the PlayStation 5 Pro with PSSR. Now it seems like they're using something that's more similar to FSSR4 on the PS4 Pro starting in 2026, or the PS5 Pro starting in 2026. So this upscaling is here to stay. And when you're talking about upscaling, I mean, NVIDIA and DLSS is kind of the gold standard. When you see how it takes an image and it makes it look so much better on weaker PCs and allows you things like higher visual fidelity and higher frame rates, this is how the Nintendo Switch 2 is going to be able to keep up with the Joneses, with Nintendo's little secret sauce. Well, a new patent was discovered that's actually not technically new, but it is an updated patent that shows basically some sort of upscaling. And I know many people are going to look at this and immediately think of one thing, but I'm kind of going in a bit of a different direction with this. So let's take a look at the image here. You could see that it is broken up into a few different pieces, and basically the starting point to the ending point. You have the render image, a 540p image, the prepare image, input data, reorganized to matrix so that Neo and Morpheus can mess with it, 16 by 16 passive Neo activations, run neural network, 16 by whatever, reorganize into blocks, 1080p output, reorganize, 1080p image output, converted image. So people are looking at this image right here, which is an official Nintendo patent, and saying, oh, okay, well, this is going to be how games are going to be utilized for the Nintendo Switch 2. And maybe that's the case. I'm not writing that off in any way, shape, or form, but there's something that really sticks out to me in this patent that bothers me to the point of where I almost think that it's not for the Switch 2 as far as new Switch 2 games are concerned, but potentially for Switch 1 games. And I know that's kind of crazy because I've been kind of the mindset where I'm like, you know, I don't think there's going to be any sort of graphical updates to Switch 1 games on the Switch 2. Maybe companies themselves will like make a patch, but as far as like brute forcing something where you have a game and the game automatically upscales to the Switch 2 that was a Switch 1 game, I didn't really foresee that as a possibility. But there's something in this image that makes me kind of think that, and that's the 540p image that is shown here. Because yes, I'm not expecting companies to make, you know, native 4K games for the Nintendo Switch 2. I think there will be a lot of games that are potentially 720p or 1080p or 900p, and then those are upscaled via Nintendo DLSS stuff for the Switch 2 to make them look more enhanced. You know, a game like Super Mario Odyssey, that is a 900p game that still looks fantastic. So Super Mario Odyssey 2, or whatever the case may be, if that is a native 900p game that gets an upscale boost from the Nintendo Switch 2 and the new technology, the upscaling within that, that kind of makes sense to me. But I don't foresee many companies targeting a 540p image for a Switch 2 native game. Like, I guess you could, but it seems like to me that would be more work than doing something that's more, especially for like a multi-platform game. That seems like it would be so much more work to make a super downgraded version and rely on upscaling to take that game and make it, you know, look like a modern game than it would be just to do it at 720p or 900p or some other, you know, variant of that. Like, that is a very low metric. So when I look at this, I'm almost thinking to myself, could this have to do with Switch 1 games running on the Switch 2? Because there are quite a few games that have very low, you know, visual fidelity comparative to the other systems that they came out on, or games that have sections with a dynamic frame rate, or it's 720p sometimes, 540p other times. Look at a game like Xenoblade Chronicles 2. You know, people tell me it's such a great game, but like, bro, I play my Switch in handheld mode a lot. And when I'm playing that game in handheld mode, it is not visually appealing at all. It is sub 480p in the year that the game came out, which was 2017. Like, even that was dated back then. Now, you know, in 2025, like, that's just ridiculous. So if I'm able to play this game in handheld mode on the Switch 2 and it gets a resolution bump from this upscaling technology that Nintendo is using without having to do anything additional, like, that to me sounds very attractive. That to me actually, I think, elongates my Switch 1 library, because maybe games, because I put like 15 plus hours into Xenoblade Chronicles 2, but it was just so, you know, janky and low resolution in handheld mode that I was like, bro, I can't play this anymore. Like, this actually hurts my eyes. But I might want to revisit that now. And I think that would potentially breathe a lot of life into Nintendo Switch 1 games, and companies can still do, you know, upgrade patches and stuff like that if they would rather sort of hone something in like this. But I don't necessarily think that this patent is being done in mind with Switch 2 games, just because of that 540p thing. I can't imagine many companies would target that as their base rendering, and then just, you know, use this upscaling to sort of brute force their game to go up to 1080p or something like that. Now, of course, you have to factor in a myriad of things, because obviously things like this aren't just going to come out of thin air as far as, you know, hardware is concerned. You know, this will do things like potentially impact battery life and how long you're going to be able to play the games in handheld mode. This could be something that's just tied to the dock. I don't really foresee that being a thing, because this definitely seems much more hardware based than, you know, something extra in the dock itself. But who really knows? You know, I'm just kind of theorizing with this. I'm just throwing this out into the atmosphere, because I like to look at things kind of from a different perspective. I feel like most people that are looking at this are just like, oh, well, this is kind of an example of the DLSS for the Nintendo Switch 2. And it very may well be. But that 540p image as the baseline, as the native image, I don't know, man. That just doesn't sit right with me for a console that's coming out in 2025. If you're still struggling to make games at 540p on the Switch 2, that really sounds like a you problem. That really sounds like a developmental problem, because I have $300 mini PCs that can run, you know, top-notch games at decent frame rates and better resolutions than that. And you would expect the Switch 2 to be much more optimized as a handheld platform than something like a random Chinese mini PC that I have. So these are just my thoughts on the situation. I'm not saying this is factual. I'm not saying this is actual. I'm just saying this is a possibility. And the more I look at this graph that we have for this from the patent that Nintendo has updated themselves, the more I'm kind of leaning towards, maybe this is for Switch 1 games. And if that's the case, shit, man, that's gonna be really cool. Like I will definitely revisit some Switch 1 games that are, especially like third-party games that, were good, but like they definitely could have used a little bit of a boost like that. I definitely will revisit some of those games because obviously, there's going to be times of quietness or maybe games that don't appeal to me on the Switch 2 that come out. So this would be nice to kind of fill in the gaps. Let me know in the comments section down below, though. How do you view the patent? Do you think this is for Switch 2, just for Switch 2 games? Or do you think, this could be potentially for Switch 1 games? And would that kind of, factor into you wanting to upgrade to the Switch 2 earlier? Because of the fact that you'll be able to potentially experience your Switch 1 library at better resolution and better frame rates. Let me know in the comments section down below. And as always, guys, thank you for checking out this video. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like. Be sure to share it around as well. Why did I upload this at 7 a.m. Eastern time? Because I know stupid John is going to talk about it at 8 a.m. Eastern time, and I'm beating him to the punch because I'm a petty person and a petty friend. And as always, I'll catch you guys on the next video. Later.